A lone island stands silent in an empty ocean, keeping its secrets locked in stone and shadow. We are about to embark on a journey to 35 of the world's most enigmatic forgotten islands, places where history, myth, and mystery are permanently intertwined. By the end, you will possess a map to the planet's greatest unsolved puzzles, from sunken cities to civilizations that vanished without a word. You will see massive stone spheres placed by an unknown hand, and hear the chilling true story of 3 lighthouse keepers who disappeared from a remote rock. What is it about islands that seems to attract the most profound and lasting mysteries? Our first destination lies off the Pacific coast of Costa Rica, a small island cloaked in dense jungle and surrounded by clear blue waters. Isla del Caño is home to one of archaeology's most visually striking puzzles. Scattered across its landscape are dozens of massive stone spheres, some as large as small cars, carved with such precision that they approach near-perfect roundness. Their surfaces are smooth, their curves unnervingly exact, and their presence in this remote place feels utterly deliberate, yet their purpose remains a secret lost to time. The modern world stumbled upon them in the 1930s, not by archaeologists, but by workers for the United Fruit Company who were clearing land for banana plantations. As the jungle was pushed back, these perfect orbs of solid granite were revealed, lying half buried in the earth as if placed there by giants. The immediate question was not just why they were there, but how. The Diquis culture, which flourished in this region for centuries before Spanish contact, left no written records. They had no metal tools, no wheels, and no draft animals. Yet they somehow quarried these immense stones from miles away, transported them through rugged terrain and across rivers, and then shaped them with a mason's precision. The leading theory suggests a long process of heating the granite with fire, then rapidly cooling it with water to create fractures, followed by endless hours of pecking and grinding with other stones to achieve that impossible smoothness. But the why is where the true mystery deepens. Some researchers propose they were astronomical markers, aligned with celestial events to create a giant calendar under the open sky. Others believe they were symbols of power and status, arranged around the homes of chiefs to denote authority and cosmic connection. A more speculative idea wonders if their placement mirrored constellations or sacred geographical patterns, creating a 3-dimensional map of a world we can no longer read. Each sphere, sitting silently in the jungle, is a testament to a sophisticated understanding of geometry and a monumental will to shape the very land. They are artifacts that defy simple explanation, pulling us into a past where art, science, and spirituality were likely one and the same. What message were the makers of Isla del Caño trying to send across the centuries, and why did they choose such a perfect, enduring, and mysterious shape to send it? From geometric perfection in the jungle, we plunge into the deep blue unknown. Off the westernmost tip of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni, lies an underwater discovery that has divided experts for decades. Resting about 80 feet beneath the waves is a colossal structure known as the Yonaguni-monument. To swim around it is to encounter something that feels profoundly unnatural. The formation rises from the seafloor like a stepped pyramid, with sharp, flat terraces that descend in clean levels. There are what appear to be massive stone pillars, perfectly straight walls meeting at crisp 90-degree angles, and even a distinctive heart-shaped stone. One of the most striking features is a sunken triangular pool with 2 large holes at its apex that look eerily like mooring points for ancient vessels. The entire site stretches for nearly 500 feet, a silent, drowned cityscape. The central debate is stark. Geologists point to the powerful currents in the area and the unique sandstone bedrock, which naturally fractures along straight lines and flat plains. They argue that what we see is a spectacular but entirely natural formation, a masterpiece of underwater erosion. On the other side is researcher Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist who has spent years studying the site. Kimura insists the monument is unmistakably man-made. He points to features that seem to defy random chance, like the twin monoliths that look like carved faces, the series of steps that are all uniform in height, and the precise right angles found throughout the structure. His most compelling argument involves timing. If the monument is artificial, it had to have been carved when this area was above sea level, which would place its construction at around 10,000 years ago, a time that predates any known civilization in the region by millennia. This timeline fuels speculation about lost continents, specifically the legendary land of Mu, a Pacific counterpart to Atlantis said to have sunk beneath the ocean. The visual evidence is hauntingly persuasive. Photographs and video footage reveal shapes and patterns that our brains instinctively recognize as architecture. It looks like a plaza, a stadium, a temple complex, but is that simply because we are hardwired to see order in chaos? The Yonaguni-monument forces us to confront a fundamental question about human history. Are we looking at the world's oldest known pyramid, a relic from a forgotten chapter of humanity, or are we witnessing the incredible power of nature to mimic the works of man? The ocean keeps its answer locked away, a riddle written in stone and shrouded in perpetual twilight. The silent stones of Yonaguni challenge our timeline of civilization, but on another Pacific island, the evidence of a fallen society stands in plain sight. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is defined by its moai, those nearly 1,000 stone giants gazing inland. Yet the true depth of the island's mystery lies not just in the statues themselves, but in the forgotten world that created them. This is a story of incredible ingenuity followed by a devastating collapse, and the clues are etched not only in volcanic rock, but in wood. While the moai are famous, the island holds an even more perplexing puzzle, the Rongorongo script. Discovered on a handful of wooden tablets in the 19th century, it consists of intricate glyphs of birds, fish, plants, and geometric shapes. It is the only indigenous script ever found in all of Polynesia, a complex written language that appeared in total isolation. To this day, no one has been able to decipher it. The meaning of those carved symbols died with the last learned elders, taking with it the island's history, its myths, and its final explanation for the moai. The statues themselves were only part of a sacred complex. Each moai stood upon a massive stone platform called an ahu. These were not mere bases, but ceremonial centers, often containing tombs. The ahu were precisely engineered, built with fitted stones without mortar, and some were astronomically aligned. The entire landscape was a carefully designed ritual space, connecting the ancestors, represented by the moai, to the community and the cosmos. How these multi-ton statues were moved from the quarry to these coastal platforms has fueled debate for generations. The traditional theory involved log rollers and large teams slowly dragging them across the island. But a compelling modern hypothesis, supported by experimental archaeology, suggests the statues might have been walked. By carefully rocking a moai from side to side with ropes, teams could have made the statue appear to walk itself forward in a swaying motion, a method that would align with oral histories that literally described the statues walking to their ahu. This ingenious technique would have required far fewer people and resources than previously thought. The island's ultimate tragedy, however, is its ecological story. To move the moai, whether by walking or dragging, required vast quantities of strong timber for ropes and levers. The evidence shows that the island was once covered in a lush palm forest. Over centuries, the society cut down every single tree. Without trees, the soil eroded, crops failed, and they could no longer build fishing canoes to access deep seafood. The society that had achieved such monumental feats of engineering collapsed into famine, warfare, and a population crash. This raises a haunting final question about connections. Some researchers point to the sweet potato, a South American crop, which was a staple on Rapa Nui long before European contact. This has led to theories of trans-Pacific voyages, suggesting the islanders may have had contact with the continent, perhaps even influencing their stonework. Were the people of Rapa Nui isolated architects of their own destiny, or were they part of a lost network of ancient seafarers? The Moai stand as silent sentinels to a forgotten answer. While the Moai represent a civilization sculpting its own landscape, another island mystery reveals a people who literally built their world from the seafloor up. In the remote waters of Micronesia, on the island of Pohnpei, lie the ruins of Nan-Madol. This is not a city built on land, but a city built of it. Imagine a vast network of 92 artificial islands, constructed entirely atop a living coral reef connected by a labyrinth of canals. It is a place so unique it has earned the name the Venice of the Pacific, but its origins are far more ancient and mysterious than its European counterpart. The scale is breathtaking. These islets are not made of simple rubble, but of colossal, prism-shaped basalt logs. These are not small stones. Some of these hexagonal and octagonal columns weigh up to 50 tons each, and there are hundreds of thousands of them. They were quarried from the other side of the island, transported miles across the open ocean, and then stacked like colossal lumber to form towering walls, tombs, and platforms that rise directly from the water. The engineering challenge seems insurmountable. The builders, the Sodalor dynasty, had no metal tools, no pulleys, no wheels, and no draft animals. How did they move these titanic stones? The practical answer likely involves a staggering feat of coordinated human labor, using rafts, ropes, and an immense amount of patience and ingenuity. They may have floated the stones on bamboo rafts during high tide, maneuvering them into position with a system of levers and pivots, but the local legends offer a far more magical explanation. Oral histories speak of two powerful brothers, Olasipa and Olasopa, who used a sacred dragon or a magical flying canoe to levitate the stones through the air, commanding them to fly to the site and settle into place. This legend speaks to the sheer impossibility the structure represented to later generations, an achievement so grand it could only be explained by sorcery. Nan-Madol was not a city for the living in the traditional sense. It served as the ceremonial and political heart of the Sodalor Empire, a place of immense spiritual power. The largest islet was a royal mortuary where chiefs were entombed. Other platforms housed priests, served as ritual spaces for communicating with the gods, or were used for the production of sacred foods. The entire complex, with its canals acting as watery streets, was designed to separate the ruling elite from the common people, both physically and spiritually. Today, the silence of the ruins is profound. The canals are choked with mangrove, and the stone walls are slowly being reclaimed by the jungle, but the feeling of the place is anything but peaceful. Nan-Madol has a powerful reputation for being haunted. Visitors and locals alike report a deep sense of unease, feelings of being watched, and sudden drops in temperature. Some speak of a persistent, low humming sound with no discernible source. This eerie atmosphere has cemented its status as a place where the past is not just remembered but palpably felt. Was it the residual energy of a powerful, theocratic state, or simply the awe that such an impossible city inspires? Nan-Madol stands as a monument to human ambition, a city conjured from coral and volcanic rock that challenges our understanding of what ancient societies could achieve and leaves us wondering if some secrets are still guarded by more than just time. The haunted canals of Nan-Madol speak of a civilization that vanished, leaving only its stone bones behind. But on the opposite side of the world, a different kind of disappearance unfolded, one marked not by silent ruins but by a single tantalizing word. In the late 16th century, a group of over 100 English men, women, and children established a settlement on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their governor, John White, sailed back to England for vital supplies, but his return was delayed for 3 long years by war with Spain. When he finally made it back to the island in 1590, he found the settlement utterly deserted. The houses had been carefully dismantled, not destroyed, and the only clue left behind was a single word carved into a fort post, Croatoan, and the letters Siabro carved into a nearby tree. There were no signs of a struggle, no graves, and no indication of where the entire population had gone. The word itself was a reference. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, home to a Native American tribe who had been friendly to the colonists. It was also a pre-arranged signal. The colonists had agreed that if they were forced to leave, they would carve a Maltese cross into a tree to indicate danger. No cross was found. The carving of Croatoan suggested a planned, voluntary move. So why did they leave, and what truly became of them? The leading theory, supported by many historians, is assimilation. Facing starvation and isolation, the colonists may have split into smaller groups and integrated with the Croatoan people or other nearby tribes. This was not uncommon in early colonial history. Decades later, reports surfaced of Native Americans in the region with gray eyes, European features, and knowledge of the Christian faith, which the Roanoke colonists practiced. Some even spoke English. A devastating storm is another possibility. The Carolina coast is prone to powerful hurricanes, and a direct hit could have destroyed their ships and shelters, forcing a desperate evacuation inland. Conflict is a darker theory. Relations with some local tribes were tense, and an attack could have scattered or captured the colonists. Yet the orderly state of the abandoned site argues against a sudden, violent end. For centuries, the mystery remained frozen in history books, a perfect ghost story. But modern archaeology has begun to whisper new clues. Researchers have examined a site known as Site X, inland from the coast, where English artifacts from the correct time period have been discovered, including fragments of pottery and a type of gun part unique to the late 16th century. This suggests some colonists may have moved inland as a group, perhaps following a plan. Even more compelling is the analysis of a map. John White's own illustrated map of the region, held at the British Museum, was found to have a tiny, star-shaped patch covering a location on the mainland. When examined with modern imaging technology, the patch was found to conceal a symbol of a fort. Was this the secret location of a planned secondary settlement, a place the colonists intended to move to all along? The enduring power of the Roanoke story lies in its heartbreaking human scale. This was not a lost army or a vanished civilization, but families, children, and craftsmen. Their disappearance feels like a door slammed shut in the middle of a sentence. It is the ultimate cold case, a puzzle where every potential answer raises new questions. Were they victims of circumstance, or did they successfully reinvent themselves in a new world, their English identities slowly fading into the forest? The island holds its silence, and the word Croatoan remains one of history's most famous and frustrating farewells. The silent farewell of Roanoke leaves us with a single carved word, but beneath the turquoise waters of the Bahamas, an entire sentence seems written in stone. Just off the coast of North Bimini lies a formation that has ignited one of the most passionate debates in modern archaeology. Known as the Bimini Road, it appears to be a submerged pathway stretching for nearly half a mile along the seafloor. From above, the site is uncanny, a straight line of massive, rectangular limestone blocks resting in about 20 feet of crystal-clear water. To many who first saw it, the conclusion was instantaneous. They were looking at a sunken road, a wall, or perhaps a dock built by a lost civilization. Its discovery in 1968 was seized upon by enthusiasts of the legendary Atlantis, who proclaimed this was the first physical proof of Plato's fabled continent, a piece of a once great harbor now claimed by the sea. The visual argument is compelling. The blocks, some weighing several tons, are arranged in a deliberate-looking line, with some appearing to be stacked or fitted together. The overall shape suggests order, not chaos, a pattern that our minds desperately want to read as human design. The geological explanation, however, tells a different story. Mainstream science identifies the Bimini Road as a striking example of beach rock. This is a natural concrete-like material that forms in tropical shorelines. Over thousands of years, sand, shells, and other sediments are cemented together by calcium carbonate, which precipitates from the seawater. As sea levels rise, these solid sheets of beach rock submerge. Then, a fascinating natural process takes over. The weaker material around and beneath the cemented layer erodes away, leaving the tougher beach rock to fracture along its natural joints. The result can be long, straight lines of blocky segments that look eerily man-made. The fractures create what appear to be fitted joints and right angles, all through the random, patient work of erosion. Proponents of the artificial origin are not convinced. They point to specific features that, in their view, defy a purely natural explanation. Some note that the blocks seem to be placed on pillars of smaller stones, suggesting a foundational layer. Others highlight the two distinct parallel rows of blocks that form a J shape, arguing this is a classic harbor configuration known from the ancient Mediterranean. The most persistent claim is that the stones show tool marks, precise drilling, and evidence of being quarried and moved. For them, the Bimini Road is a megalithic site, contemporary with or even older than other ancient wonders, and its location in the Bahamas fits perfectly with old maps and legends pointing to lost lands in the Atlantic. The debate, then, is a clash between two ways of seeing. Are we witnessing a magnificent geological coincidence, a trick of nature that perfectly mimics human masonry? Or are we looking at the drowned ruins of a sophisticated seafaring culture, a tangible piece of a history our textbooks have missed? The warm Bahamian water offers no easy verdict, leaving us to ponder where the line between a natural wonder and a human one truly lies. The debate over nature's artistry or human hands continues far to the south, on one of the most isolated specks of land on Earth. Maldon Island is a barren coral atoll in the central Pacific, part of the nation of Kiribati. It is a place of stark emptiness with no fresh water, sparse vegetation, and no evidence anyone ever lived there permanently. Yet scattered across its desolate interior are the ruins of over 40 ancient stone structures that defy this very emptiness. These are not natural formations. They are clearly man-made platforms called marae and low pyramids, meticulously constructed from flat slabs of coral rock. The largest structures are immense, with platforms measuring over 100 feet long and walls standing several feet high. They form a silent, geometric city in the middle of nowhere. The mystery is absolute: who built them and for what possible reason. The builders left no tools, no pottery, no middens of food waste, and no graves. It is as if they arrived, performed their task with singular purpose, and then vanished back into the ocean. The total lack of fresh water makes the idea of a sustained construction crew, let alone a permanent settlement, seem ludicrous. How could workers survive here long enough to quarry and stack countless heavy slabs under the relentless Pacific sun? This impossibility points to the most compelling theory. Maldon Island was likely not a home but a destination. It served as a sacred ceremonial site, a kind of neutral ground temple complex used by voyaging Polynesians. Think of it as a cathedral built upon a remote mountain peak, a place of such spiritual power that its isolation was the entire point. Skilled navigators from other islands, perhaps the Marquesas or the Society Islands hundreds of miles away, would have made the perilous journey here for specific rituals. The marae platforms, similar in design to those found across Polynesia, were temples for worship and sacrifice. The pyramids may have served as altars or markers for astronomical observation. The island's barrenness, rather than a problem, would have been a feature, a blank slate purified by the sea, perfect for connecting with the gods far from the distractions of everyday life. This transforms Maldon from a puzzling settlement into a profound statement of faith and skill. It means ancient Polynesians were not only capable of finding this tiny dot in a vast ocean, but they did so intentionally, repeatedly, to build monuments to their beliefs. The structures are a testament to a spiritual geography that mapped the Pacific not by resources, but by sacred significance. Today, the island is visited only by seabirds and the occasional scientist. The silence is profound, broken only by the wind and waves. Standing before these orderly stacks of coral under the endless sky, one feels the weight of a forgotten pilgrimage. What ceremonies were performed here under the watchful stars? What prayers were offered, and what promises were made to the gods of the deep? The stones hold the echo of a faith that crossed thousands of miles of open ocean to reach this sacred ground. From sacred isolation in the Pacific, we sail to the heart of a storm that shattered the ancient world. Around 1200 BC, the glittering civilizations of the eastern Mediterranean were consumed by fire and chaos. The mighty Hittite Empire vanished. The great city-states of Ugarit and Mycenae collapsed. Egypt itself barely survived, its pharaohs recording desperate battles against a shadowy confederation known only as the Sea Peoples. In the midst of this cataclysm, one island stood at the very crossroads of catastrophe and fortune: Cyprus. Known in ancient texts as Alashia, Cyprus was not a mere bystander to history, it was a central player, and its fate is a critical piece of this millennia-old puzzle. The island's power was forged from the earth itself, copper. Cyprus was the namesake of this vital metal, the primary ingredient for the bronze that armed armies and built the economies of the age. Alashia grew immensely wealthy, a crucial trade partner to Egypt and the Hittites, its kings exchanging letters as equals with pharaohs in the famous Amarna archive. They wrote of shipments of copper, of gifts of ivory and ebony, and of diplomatic ties. Then the letters stop. Archaeology reveals a brutal and sudden end. At key coastal cities like Nkomi and Kishan, archaeologists find a distinct and horrifying layer, a thick band of ash, rubble, and charred destruction. Homes, workshops, and palaces were reduced to smoldering ruins in a single, violent event. Mixed within this layer are scattered treasures, hurriedly hidden hoards of bronze and jewelry left forever unclaimed, and the grim evidence of unburied bodies. This was not a slow decline, it was a swift and total obliteration. The prime suspects in this historical whodunit are the Sea Peoples. Egyptian reliefs depict them as a fearsome coalition of different tribes, arriving in ships and ox-drawn carts with their families, suggesting a migration, not just a raid. They fought with a distinctive array of weapons and war-plumed helmets, but who were they and where did they come from? Theories abound, from displaced groups from the Aegean and Anatolia to a domino effect of climate change and famine that sent entire populations on the move. Cyprus, with its legendary copper wealth, would have been a glittering prize, a strategic necessity for any force looking to cripple the established powers and forge a new order. Was Alashia a primary target for the Sea Peoples, its industry destroyed to cripple the bronze supply of their enemies? Or was the island itself a haven for some of these mysterious groups, a new homeland seized in the turmoil? Some archaeologists point to sudden changes in pottery styles and burial customs in the period after the destruction, suggesting new peoples settling on the ashes. The mystery of the Sea Peoples and Cyprus is ultimately a story of interconnectedness. It shows us that even an island was not an isolated fortress, but a node in a fragile global network. When that network failed, the shockwaves reached every shore. The silence that fell over Alashia's ruins was the same silence that fell across the known world, a dark age that lasted for centuries. What did the last king of Alashia see on the horizon, and did he recognize the end of an era approaching in the shape of strange ships? The collapse of Alashia plunged the Mediterranean into a silence that lasted for centuries, but on the island of Crete, a different kind of silence was being baked into clay. In the ruins of the Minoan Palace of Phaistos, archaeologists uncovered an object that is not a grand statue or a golden treasure, but a small, fired clay disc about the size of a standard dinner plate. Yet this unassuming artifact, known as the Phaistos disc, may be the single most enigmatic written document ever discovered. On both of its faces, a continuous spiral of 45 distinct symbols is stamped, one after another, forming what can only be described as a coded message from a lost world. Each symbol, from human heads and shields to birds, bees, and flowers, was pressed into the soft clay with a separate seal, making this one of the earliest examples of movable type printing in human history, predating Gutenberg by over 3,000 years. And that is where all certainty ends. The script on the disc is utterly unique. It shares no connection with Linear A or Linear B, the other known Minoan writing systems. In fact, nothing remotely like it has ever been found anywhere else on Earth. It is a linguistic island isolated in time and space. This total isolation is the core of the mystery. Because we have no other examples, no Rosetta Stone with a parallel text, decipherment has proven impossible. The symbols are clear and beautifully crafted, but they are ghosts without a language to give them voice. Is it a hymn to a Minoan goddess, a prayer pressed into permanent form? Could it be a narrative, a story of a king, or a myth of creation? Some have playfully suggested it is an ancient board game, its spiral path waiting for tokens. Others argue it might not even be Minoan at all, but a foreign import, a sacred text or a diplomatic document brought to Crete from some unknown culture across the sea, making its script even more untraceable. Every attempt to crack the code runs into the same wall. Without more text, any proposed translation is little more than an educated guess, a pattern imposed by the hopeful mind of the modern researcher. The disc sits in its museum case in Heraklion, a perfect, silent loop. It represents a tantalizing and frustrating truth about ancient islands, that a sophisticated civilization can rise, create art and writing of stunning complexity, and then vanish, taking the key to its own thoughts with it. We can admire the disc's craftsmanship, we can study the frequency of its symbols, but the words themselves, the ideas and passions of the person who stamped that clay, are lost forever. It is a message sent with no guarantee it would ever be received, a voice speaking clearly from the past, but in a language the future can no longer understand. The silent spiral of the Phaistos disc speaks a language we may never learn, but on a windswept archipelago closer to mainland Europe, an ancient society communicated through stones so massive their meaning echoes across the millennia. The Balearic Islands of Minorca and Mallorca are home to one of the Mediterranean's most distinctive and mysterious prehistoric cultures, the Talaiotic people. From around 1500 BC until the Roman conquest, these islanders built a landscape of monuments that feels both strangely familiar and utterly alien. Their legacy is written in three unique words: talaiots, taulas, and navators. First, the talaiots. These are massive, conical stone towers that dot the countryside. Built without mortar from cyclopean blocks, they could reach heights of over 30 feet. Their purpose remains debated. Were they watchtowers for defense, signaling across the island's rolling hills? Were they silos for storing grain, symbols of communal wealth and security? Or did they serve a more spiritual function, acting as focal points for the community, their imposing presence a constant reminder of shared identity and power? Then there are the navators, which translates to little ships. These are not boats, but extraordinary stone tombs shaped like upturned hulls of vessels. The most famous, the Navata des Tudons on Minorca, is a masterpiece of dry stone construction, its walls curving inward to form a sealed chamber. Inside, archaeologists discovered the remains of over 100 individuals, along with personal grave goods like bronze bracelets and ceramic buttons. The Navators suggest a profound reverence for the dead and a belief in a journey perhaps metaphorically linked to the sea that surrounded them. But the crown jewel of Talaiotic mystery is the taula. Found only on Minorca, a taula is a T-shaped monument of staggering simplicity and power. Two massive limestone slabs are carefully engineered, one planted vertically in the ground with another perfectly balanced horizontally on top, creating a monumental table that can stand over 15 feet tall. These structures are always found within a horseshoe-shaped enclosure, and they are consistently oriented towards the south. The name itself means table in Catalan, and that has fueled one leading theory that they were altars for animal sacrifice, with channels found in some enclosures possibly used for ritual libations of blood or wine. Other researchers see them as symbolic entrances to the underworld, or as representations of a deity, a stone god forever watching over the sacred precinct. What makes these structures so perplexing is their isolation. The Talaiotic culture developed in remarkable seclusion, while other Mediterranean civilizations like the Mycenaeans or Phoenicians were trading and exchanging ideas. The Balearic Islanders created an architectural vocabulary entirely their own. Their taulas look nothing like the temples of Greece or the tombs of Sardinia. This suggests a society that was intensely inward-looking, developing a unique cosmology and social structure shaped by their island environment. Who ruled this society? The scale of construction implies strong, centralized leadership capable of organizing labor, yet there is little evidence of a wealthy elite class in burials. It may have been a communal theocracy where religious leaders directed the building of monuments that reinforced a shared belief system. The taller enclosures, with their open horseshoe shape, feel like spaces designed for communal ritual, places where the entire community could gather to witness ceremonies that connected them to their ancestors and their gods. Why did this culture eventually fade after the Roman arrival? Was it conquest, assimilation, or simply the slow erosion of an old faith in the face of a new world? The Talaiots stand as silent sentinels, the Navatars hold their collective breath, and the Taulas reach for a sky whose secrets they keep. They are a reminder that an island can be a cradle for a worldview so complete, so self-contained, that when it vanishes, it leaves behind questions as monumental as the stones themselves. The monumental Taulas of Menorca reach for the heavens, but on a remote Japanese island, a different kind of devotion turned inward, seeking enlightenment not in stone, but within the human body itself. On Sado Island and in the remote mountains of northern Japan, a small number of Buddhist monks achieved the ultimate state of spiritual discipline, becoming what are known as Sokushin Butsu, the self-mummified living Buddhas. This is not a story of natural preservation or accidental discovery. It is a deliberate, agonizing, and years-long ritual aimed at transcending death itself. The process began while the monk was still very much alive. For 1,000 days, he would undertake a phase called Mokujikujio, the tree-eating practice. His diet was stripped of all grains, relying instead on nuts, berries, and the bark and roots of pine trees. This served a dual purpose. It eliminated all body fat, which decomposes quickly, and it introduced natural toxins from the pine that helped repel insects and bacteria after death. The next 1,000 days saw his diet reduced to just a handful of nuts and seeds per day, and he would drink a poisonous tea made from the sap of the oroshi tree, the same lacquer used to waterproof bowls. This tea induced vomiting, sweating, and further dehydration, while its toxins seeped into his system, creating an internal preservative. Finally, when he felt his end was near, the monk would enter a tiny, underground stone chamber barely larger than his body. Seated in the lotus position, he would meditate until his final breath, a small bamboo air tube his only connection to the world above. His followers would then seal the tomb, leaving him undisturbed for another 1,000 days. Only then would they open the chamber. If the body was found perfectly preserved, it was a sign of supreme spiritual success. The monk was declared a Sokushin Butsu, a Buddha in the flesh, and enshrined in a temple for veneration. If decomposition had taken place, he was respectfully reburied, his effort still honored. The spiritual mystery here is profound. For these monks, this extreme act was the pinnacle of compassion and discipline. By enduring the suffering of the process, they believed they were accumulating merit not just for themselves, but for all beings, becoming a permanent vessel of spiritual power to aid others. They sought to bypass the cycle of death and rebirth entirely, achieving nirvana in their own physical form. Modern science, however, examines these remarkably preserved bodies with a different lens. Researchers have confirmed the effectiveness of the ancient method. The extreme dehydration and lack of body fat created an environment where bacteria responsible for decay could not thrive. The toxic compounds from the pine bark and yorushi tea acted as potent natural biocides, mummifying the tissues from the inside out. This raises a haunting question about the line between sacred miracle and sophisticated ancient science. Were these monks spiritual pioneers who unlocked a biological secret through sheer will, or were they practitioners of a deliberate preservation technique shrouded in religious ritual? The Sokushin Batsu sit in serene silence in their temple altars, their skin like darkened leather, their features peaceful yet stark. They do not offer easy answers. They are eternal reminders of a belief so powerful it sought to conquer the most fundamental law of nature, and in doing so, left behind a mystery that rests uneasily between the realms of faith and flesh. The serene Sokushin Batsu achieved their eternity through conscious ritual, but on a chain of volcanic islands far out in the Atlantic, an entire people achieved a different kind of preservation, frozen in time by the sheer force of isolation. The Canary Islands, lying off the coast of Africa, were home to the Guanches, a people whose existence presented a riddle that confounded the European explorers who found them in the 15th century. Here was a society living a Stone Age life, using tools of wood, bone, and obsidian, yet performing one of the most complex cultural practices known to humanity, the mummification of their dead. Their very presence on the islands was the first layer of the mystery. Genetic and linguistic studies have confirmed the Guanches were Berbers originating from North Africa. Sometime in the first millennium BC, or perhaps even earlier, they undertook a monumental voyage across a treacherous stretch of open ocean. With no knowledge of sails or metal, they likely made the crossing in simple reed boats or crude rafts, a journey that would have required incredible nautical skill and courage just to survive. Once they arrived, the ocean that brought them became an impassable wall. For potentially 2,000 years, they had no contact with the outside world. Their technology regressed or simply stalled, as they lacked the raw materials and external stimuli to advance beyond a Neolithic toolkit. Yet, in this isolated bubble, their culture evolved in astonishingly sophisticated ways. Their mummification practices, discovered in the dry caves of Tenerife, are a startling parallel to those of ancient Egypt, yet developed entirely independently. The Guanche method was meticulous. The internal organs were removed through incisions, the body was cleaned with salt and herbal mixtures, then stuffed with aromatic plants and pine needles before being carefully wrapped in goat skins. The finished mummies, called zaxos, were then placed in remote, sacred caves high in the mountains. This practice reveals a complex spiritual world centered on ancestor veneration and a belief in an afterlife, concepts that required a stable, structured society to maintain across generations. How did they develop such an elaborate practice in total isolation? It suggests a deep, shared cultural memory carried from their North African homeland, a single seed of ritual that blossomed into a unique island tradition. Their social structure was equally developed. They lived in caves and simple stone houses organized into kingdoms ruled by a mensi or king. They practiced a form of rudimentary agriculture and herded goats, but their most famous feat was a physical one, a martial art and game called the jugo del polo, or stick fighting, and their ability to hurl small stones with lethal accuracy from handheld slings. When the Spanish conquistadors finally arrived, they documented a tall, physically imposing people with fair skin and blonde or red hair, living in a world that seemed like a fragment of a prehistoric past, yet speaking a language, making pottery, and governing themselves with clear laws. The conquest was brutal and swift, and the Guanche culture was effectively wiped out within a century. Today, their legacy survives in place names, in the genetic makeup of modern Canary Islanders, and in those silent, desiccated mummies gazing out from their cave tombs. They stand as a profound testament to human adaptability and a haunting question: what happens to a civilization when it is left completely alone? The Guanches perfected the art of preserving the body, but in their isolation, they inadvertently preserved a snapshot of a forgotten age, a living fossil of a culture that sailed into the unknown and built a world that time forgot. While the Moai gaze stoically across the land, the true voice of Rapa Nui may have been carved not in volcanic rock but in wood. The Rongorongo script is a haunting echo of a lost intellectual world. Discovered in the 19th century on a handful of wooden tablets, staffs, and ornaments, it consists of intricate glyphs etched with a shark's tooth or obsidian flake. The symbols are a captivating menagerie of the island's life and imagination. Stylized birdmen, frigate birds, palm trees, fishhooks, and complex geometric shapes, all arranged in a precise, alternating sequence that reads from left to right, bottom to top. It is beautiful, orderly, and completely unreadable. This script is not just an undeciphered language, it is a unique evolutionary branch of human communication, the only indigenous writing system ever discovered in all of Polynesia. Its existence in such profound isolation makes it a treasure of unimaginable value, and its loss is a tragedy of historical proportions. That loss came with brutal speed. In the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders descended on the island, capturing or killing nearly half the population, including the paramount chief and, crucially, the learned men who could read the sacred texts. The cultural heart of Rapa Nui was ripped out in a single, violent season. When missionaries arrived later, they found the remaining tablets, but by then, there was no one left who could interpret the flowing line. A few elders made attempts, but the knowledge was already fragmentary and soon faded entirely. The tablets themselves were dispersed across the globe, collected as curiosities, with some even being tragically destroyed. Attempts at decipherment over the last century and a half have been a parade of frustration and tantalizing near misses. Linguists have tried every method, from statistical analysis of glyph frequency to searching for parallels in other Pacific art forms. Some believe the glyphs are logographic, where each symbol represents a whole word or concept, like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Others argue it is a syllabic script where signs stand for sounds. A more radical theory suggests it is not a true writing system at all, but a form of proto-writing, a sophisticated mnemonic device to help chanters recall vast genealogies, myths, or agricultural calendars. The most heartbreaking possibility is that it was a full-fledged language capable of recording history, law, and poetry, a library of an entire civilization's thought that we now hold in our hands but cannot open. The very fact of its invention is what stuns scholars. Writing emerged independently in human history only a handful of times in Mesopotamia, China, Mesoamerica, and possibly Egypt. Rapa Nui, a tiny speck in the greatest ocean on Earth, may represent one of those rare, brilliant flashes of genius. Did a single inspired individual, a Polynesian counterpart to the legendary scribe, invent it after seeing writing on a European ship? Or was it a slow, organic development over centuries, a tool created by a complex society to manage its resources and rituals? Each carefully incised line on those surviving tablets is a direct challenge to our understanding of human innovation. It forces us to ask if brilliance can flower in the most remote soil, and if so, how many other voices have been silenced by time and tragedy, leaving behind only beautiful, unanswerable questions. The silent glyphs of Rapa Nui represent a lost voice, but on a foggy island off the coast of Canada, the promise of a tangible fortune has driven men to obsession for over 2 centuries. Oak Island, a modest 300-acre piece of land in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia, is the site of the world's longest, costliest, and most tragic treasure hunt. It began in 1795 when a local teenager named Daniel McGinnis noticed a peculiar depression in the ground beneath an old oak tree with a ship's pulley hanging from a branch above. He and two friends began to dig, and what they found would ignite a mystery that burns to this day. Just a few feet down, they hit a layer of flagstones. 10 feet deeper, they uncovered a platform of solid oak logs. At 20 and 30 feet, they found more platforms, each seemingly placed at precise intervals. They also found layers of a strange material, coconut fiber, which does not grow anywhere near Nova Scotia. This was no natural sinkhole. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury something and to protect it with a complex, layered system. Theories about what lies at the bottom are as layered as the pit itself. The most romantic idea points to pirate treasure, specifically that of Captain William Kidd, who was rumored to have hidden his vast plunder somewhere in the North Atlantic. Others suggest it could be the lost treasury of the Knights Templar, who some believe fled to the New World with religious relics, or even the missing crown jewels of French King Louis XVI, smuggled out during the Revolution. More speculative claims include the original manuscripts of William Shakespeare, or the ultimate biblical relic, the Ark of the Covenant. Each theory paints a picture of a desperate group, possessing something of incalculable value, using advanced engineering to hide it forever. The true nature of the money pit, however, is not just what might be down there, but the terrifying ingenuity designed to keep it there. As 19th century excavators dug deeper, they hit a catastrophic defense system. At around 90 feet, their drill struck what they described as a stone slab with mysterious symbols, and just beneath it, two chests filled with a metal-like substance. In their excitement, they left for the night. When they returned the next morning, the shaft was flooded with 60 feet of seawater. They bailed it out only to have it instantly refilled. They had tripped a booby trap. Further exploration revealed a series of cleverly engineered flood tunnels, dug from the pit out to the island's coastline, designed to let the ocean itself guard the secret. Every major excavation since has battled this same saltwater invasion. The quest has been marked by staggering expense, repeated collapses, and tragedy. In 1861, the first life was claimed when a boiler on a pumping engine exploded. In 1965, 4 more men died when a shaft caved in. Fortunes estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars over the years have been poured into the island, yielding a handful of tantalizing but inconclusive artifacts, like a centuries-old Spanish coin, a piece of parchment, and that ubiquitous coconut fiber. Modern efforts, documented in a long-running television series, continue the hunt with sophisticated machinery. They have drilled deep into the bedrock, finding traces of silver, gold, and even human DNA from centuries past. Yet the central chamber, if it exists, remains elusive. The money pit is more than a hole in the ground. It is a psychological puzzle. It represents the powerful human drive to solve a riddle, to believe that immense effort must be guarding something of equal value. It asks a brutal question: is this the greatest archaeological treasure site on Earth, or is it the most elaborate and costly practical joke in history? A monument not to buried gold, but to boundless human hope and stubbornness. The island gives up just enough clues to keep the dream alive, while its flooding tunnels ensure the dream remains forever out of reach. The relentless pursuit of treasure on Oak Island speaks to a deep human longing, a belief that our planet still hides grand, forgotten secrets. This same longing draws our gaze to one of the most remote and desolate points in the entire North Atlantic. West of Scotland, rising from the ocean depths with sheer, unforgiving sides, is a speck of granite called Rockall. This tiny islet, barely 100 feet wide, is constantly battered by monstrous waves and howling gales, a pinnacle of pure isolation. Yet beneath these ferocious waters, a speculative mystery has taken root, fueled by a startling sonar image. In the early 21st century, researcher Dr. Verlag Meyer announced the discovery of a large, symmetrical structure on the seabed near Rockall. The sonar return showed a shape with distinct straight edges and what appeared to be a stepped pyramidal form, resting hundreds of feet below the surface. The immediate claim was electrifying. Could this be a sunken pyramid, a remnant of a lost civilization swallowed by the Atlantic? The idea taps directly into the enduring legend of Atlantis, suggesting that advanced societies once thrived on lands now submerged, and that Rockall is merely the last surviving peak of a much larger, drowned continent. Proponents point to the sheer improbability of such a perfect geometric shape occurring naturally in the chaotic, eroded landscape of the deep ocean floor. They ask, what are the odds? For a moment, the map of human history seems poised for a dramatic rewrite. The scientific and geological perspective, however, offers a far more sobering explanation. The North Atlantic seafloor is a geologically active and incredibly rugged place, sculpted by volcanic forces, glacial scraping, and powerful currents over millions of years. What sonar interprets as a straight line or a right angle can often be a trick of perspective, a shadow, or the result of a hard, crystalline rock layer fracturing along a clean, natural plane. Seamounts, which are underwater mountains of volcanic origin, can have remarkably steep, flat sides. Furthermore, the process of sonar imaging itself can create artifacts, anomalies in the data that look like structures but are merely echoes or interference. Marine geologists who have studied the region broadly dismiss the pyramid claim, stating that the formation is almost certainly a basalt intrusion or a particularly angular seamount, a masterpiece of geology, not architecture. So why does this idea hold such powerful appeal? The persistence of the sunken pyramid theory reveals something fundamental about us. Remote, inaccessible places like the deep sea become blank canvases for our imagination. In the absence of easy exploration, myth rushes in to fill the void. The human mind is pattern-seeking, and when we see order in the deep, dark unknown, we instinctively attribute it to intelligence. It is a narrative of hope that we are not the first, that history is deeper and more wondrous than our records show. Rockall stands as a symbol of this tension, a brutal rock that offers no comfort, while the shadows at its feet promise a hidden order. Whether a natural wonder or a sunken relic, the mystery endures precisely because the truth remains locked beneath tons of crushing, icy water, in a place where few will ever venture to see for themselves. Rockall's deep-sea shadows hint at forces beyond our sight, but on a different cluster of Scottish rocks, the terror was not in what might lie beneath, but in what was undeniably missing. The Flannan Isles are a jagged, uninhabited archipelago rising from the North Atlantic, about 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis. Their sole sign of civilization was the lighthouse on Eilean Moor, the largest isle, a beacon meant to warn ships away from the treacherous coastline. In December of 1900, that beacon went dark. The routine relief vessel, the Hesperus, arrived on December 26th after days of stormy delays. The lighthouse door was unlocked. Inside, the three keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Jucat, and Donald MacArthur, were gone. The scene they left behind was a tableau of interrupted normalcy that has chilled investigators for over a century. A chair was overturned by the kitchen table. An uneaten meal of stew and bread sat untouched. The clock on the wall had stopped. The men's oilskin coats were still hanging on their pegs, a fatal mistake in the brutal North Atlantic winter. Most tellingly, the main lighthouse gate was closed, but the gate leading to the west landing, a precarious set of stairs cut into the cliff face, was wide open. The official log entries, written in Thomas Marshall's hand, told a fragmented story of escalating fear. On December 12th, he noted severe winds, the likes of which he had never seen. The final entry, dated December 15th, simply read, "Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. Then silence, the leading theory, and the one accepted by the official board of inquiry, involves a freak wave. The West Landing was a notorious spot where ocean swells could surge unpredictably, even after a storm had passed. The thinking goes that one keeper, perhaps noticing damage to equipment or a store washed away, went down to inspect. A second followed to assist. A third, seeing his comrades in peril from the platform above, rushed out without his coat to help, only for a colossal, rogue wave to sweep all three men into the sea. This explains the missing coats and the open gate, a chain of good intentions ending in sudden catastrophe. A more sinister theory suggests human conflict. The isolation of a lighthouse winter could fray the strongest nerves. Did an argument escalate into a physical struggle, the overturned chair a clue, leading to a tragic accident or even violence that left one or more men dead? In a panic, the survivors might have tried to dispose of a body over the cliff, only to be lost themselves. This theory is often fueled by the reputation of Donald MacArthur, a temporary replacement known as a strong and sometimes temperamental man. Yet no evidence of a struggle beyond the single chair was ever found. Then there is the folklore. The Flannan Isles have long been called the Seven Hunters, and local legend spoke of them as a haunted, forbidden place. Some whispered of mysterious green men or phantom birds that signaled death. While easily dismissed, these tales speak to the profound psychological power of such extreme isolation. The untouched meal and the stopped clock create an image of life suspended, as if the men were plucked from existence in a single moment. That eerie detail, more than any other, invites the supernatural, a feeling that something unnatural passed through and took them. The truth is, we will never know. The Flannan Isles mystery endures not because it is complex, but because it is starkly, horrifyingly simple. It strips away the grand narratives of empires and artifacts to a single, human-scale tragedy. It asks what happens when the thin line between routine and terror, between a warm kitchen and a raging sea, is crossed with no one there to witness it. The lighthouse still stands, its light now automated, a silent sentinel over a cliff that keeps its final secret. The human-scale tragedy of the Flannan Isles reminds us that the sea can erase lives in an instant, but sometimes it also reveals what it has taken. On the sun-baked southeastern coast of India, the ancient port town of Mahabalipuram tells a story of revelation carved in stone and hidden by water. For centuries, local fishermen passed down a vivid legend that their shore was once guarded by not one, but 7 magnificent pagodas, temples so dazzling they provoked the envy of the gods. To protect them from human pride, the story goes, the sea rose in a great flood and swallowed 6 of these marvels, leaving only the single, spectacular shore temple we see today to stand as a lonely sentinel. For generations, this tale was considered just that, a poetic myth explaining the power of the ocean. Then, in December of 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami struck with devastating force. As the colossal wave approached the coast, it first performed a bizarre and terrifying act. The water along the shore receded dramatically, pulling back hundreds of feet. And in that sudden, awful retreat, the ocean floor near Mahabalipuram gave up a secret. Villagers and scientists alike stared in astonishment at structures never before seen, large stone blocks arranged in orderly rows, the remains of walls, and the stunning sculpture of a large stone lion, all laid bare by the vanished water. The tsunami's destructive power had, for a few brief moments, acted like a colossal archaeological survey, scraping away centuries of sand and silt to expose the truth behind the legend. Subsequent underwater explorations by organizations like India's National Institute of Oceanography confirmed the incredible find. Sonar scans and dives revealed not just scattered ruins, but extensive man-made structures spread over several square miles of seabed. They found long, straight walls, stone platforms, and the foundations of what appeared to be temples, all submerged in relatively shallow water. The evidence was undeniable: a substantial settlement, likely a bustling port city from the Pallava dynasty around the 7th or 8th century, had indeed been claimed by the sea, probably through a combination of gradual sea level rise and catastrophic events like ancient tsunamis or cyclones. The large stone lion, a symbol of power in Pallava art, was a particularly poignant discovery, a guardian that had failed to protect its city from the waves. This revelation transforms Mahabalipuram from a site of singular beauty into a gateway to a lost world. The surviving shore temple, with its intricate carvings of gods and goddesses, is no longer an orphan, but the sole surviving sibling of a drowned architectural family. It raises profound questions about the pace of history's disappearance. How many other coastal cities in India and around the world have been incrementally consumed, their stories reduced to folk tales? The Mahabalipuram discovery proves that sometimes the myths are not mere stories, they are memories, geological memories passed down through countless generations, waiting for the right moment to be proven true. What other structures, perhaps even grander than the ones we've glimpsed, still lie buried under the seabed? And what could they tell us about the trade, culture, and daily life of a civilization that watched its towers slip beneath the waves? The ocean's power to both conceal and reveal history finds its most explosive parallel in a single, earth-shattering event. Around 1600 BCE, the island of Thera, now known as Santorini, was not a picturesque crescent but a towering volcanic cone. Then, in a geological instant, it ceased to exist. The Minoan eruption of Thera is considered one of the most violent volcanic events in human history, a cataclysm so immense its echoes can still be felt in our myths and our archaeology. The scale is almost incomprehensible. The volcano did not simply spew lava, it detonated. The entire center of the island collapsed into a void of its own making, creating the vast, deep caldera we see today, surrounded by sheer cliffs of multicolored ash. The explosion would have been heard across the Mediterranean. It sent a column of ash and pumice over 20 miles into the stratosphere, darkening the sky for days. Then came the tsunamis. Computer models suggest waves over 100 feet high radiating outward, a wall of water traveling at incredible speed across the open sea. Their primary target lay just 70 miles to the south, the heart of Minoan civilization on Crete. The tsunamis would have smashed into the northern coast of Crete with unimaginable force, obliterating the vital harbor towns and the fleet of ships that were the lifeblood of Minoan trade and power. Ashfall would have blanketed the eastern half of the island, smothering farmland, poisoning water, and collapsing roofs under its weight. This was not just a bad day, it was a civilization-ending shock. The sophisticated, palace-based economy of the Minoans, which had dominated the Aegean for centuries, was crippled in a single afternoon. While the culture persisted for some generations, it was left vulnerable, a shadow of its former self, easily overtaken by the rising Mycenaeans from mainland Greece. This direct link between a specific geological event and the collapse of a great civilization is rare in archaeology, and it provides a compelling real-world anchor for one of our most enduring legends. The philosopher Plato, writing over 1,000 years later, described a sophisticated island kingdom that sank beneath the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. While his details are fictional, the core memory of a brilliant maritime culture destroyed by a cataclysmic volcanic event and tsunami matches the fate of Thera and its impact on Minoan Crete with uncanny precision. Thera may very well be the seed from which the story of Atlantis grew. Yet, amidst this story of utter destruction, Thera preserved a snapshot of life with breathtaking perfection. On the southern part of the island, buried under layers of pumice and ash, lies the town of Akrotiri. This was not a royal capital, but a prosperous Cycladic town, and the volcanic burial acted like a Bronze Age time capsule. The ash did not crush the buildings, it filled them, supporting their walls and preserving entire multi-story structures. Walking through the excavated streets today is an eerily intimate experience. You see stone staircases leading to upper floors, clay pipes for a sophisticated drainage system, and large storage jars called pithoi still standing in place. But the true soul of Akrotiri is on its walls. The Minoan frescoes discovered here are among the most beautiful and informative artworks from the ancient world. They are not formal or stiff, but vibrant and full of motion. One shows two young boys boxing, their bodies captured in mid-action. Another depicts antelopes running alongside a river, their grace frozen forever. The most famous is the breathtaking spring fresco, with swooping swallows flying between vibrant red lilies, a celebration of nature's beauty painted by someone who clearly loved their island home. And this is where the profound mystery settles in. Archaeologists have found no bodies, no skeletons trapped in the ash, and very few precious metal objects. The people of Akrotiri had time to evacuate. They took their valuables and their lives with them. What we see is a town carefully abandoned, its doors shut, its last moments one of orderly escape. But to where did they flee by ship, only to be caught by the ensuing tsunamis in the open water? Did they resettle on another island, their identity slowly absorbed into other cultures? The frescoes show a society at peace, connected to the sea and the natural world, with no hint of the apocalypse brewing beneath their feet. The final moments before the evacuation must have been a strange mix of terrifying urgency and heartbreaking leave-taking. A parent glancing one last time at a freshly painted wall, a merchant securing his shop, a community facing an unfathomable threat with a discipline that saved their lives but left their home as a ghost town for 3,600 years. Akrotiri is not a monument to death but to life interrupted. It asks us what we would save if the earth itself turned against us, and what we would leave behind as a message to the future. The peaceful frescoes of Akrotiri show a society preserved in a moment of life, but in the cold, dark bogs of northern Europe, a different kind of preservation captures a moment of deliberate death. From the peat-rich islands of Ireland to the wetlands of Denmark, the earth has given up its most haunting residents, the bog bodies. These are not skeletons, but fully fleshed men and women, their skin tanned to leather by the acidic, oxygen-poor water, their faces and expressions eerily intact after 2,000 years. To look upon Toland Man, discovered in Denmark in 1950, is to lock eyes with the past. He lies as if sleeping, a gentle expression on his face, a leather cap still on his head. Yet around his neck is the braided leather noose that strangled the life from him. Lindo Man, found in an English peat bog in 1984, tells a more brutal story. He was struck violently on the head, garroted, and his throat was cut, a threefold killing that speaks of ritual precision rather than common murder. These are not accidental deaths. These individuals were placed carefully into the bog, often pinned down by wooden stakes or branches, as if the marsh itself was meant to hold them. The question that chills the bone is why. What could justify such acts in the Iron Age communities of these wet, insular landscapes? The clues are in their final meals and their fatal wounds. Toland Man's Last Supper was a simple gruel of barley, flax, and wild seeds, a meal devoid of meat, perhaps a fasting ritual before his end. Scientific analysis can detect the very weeds that grew in the fields that season, placing his death in the early winter or spring. Lindo Man's stomach contained traces of charred bread, suggesting his final act may have been a ceremonial feast. These details point away from random crime and toward solemn ceremony. The prevailing theory among archaeologists is that these were ritual sacrifices, offerings to the gods of the land. The bogs were not just wastelands to the Celtic peoples, they were liminal spaces, doorways between the world of the living and the world of the spirits. By giving the gods a life, the community might seek favor for a good harvest or appeasement during a time of famine or disease. The triple death suffered by Lindo Man mirrors a theme found in Celtic mythology, where sovereignty and power were often won through a triple sacrifice. He may have been a chosen stand-in for a king, a scapegoat whose horrific death would renew the fertility of the land for another year. Another possibility is that these were criminals or social outcasts, executed and then deposited in the bog as a form of disgrace, denied the proper burial that would allow their spirit to move on. Yet the care in their placement and the lack of signs of struggle in many cases suggests a form of consent or drugged acceptance that aligns more with sacrifice than punishment. These silent, preserved faces force us to confront a stark aspect of ancient island and coastal religions. In isolated communities deeply dependent on the capricious forces of nature, the boundary between spirituality and survival violence could be terrifyingly thin. The bog did not just preserve their bodies, it preserved the moment of their offering, a frozen instant of faith that seems utterly alien to us now. Were they willing participants going to their gods for the good of all, or were they the ultimate victims of a desperate and fearful worldview? The peat holds its answer close, leaving us with the unsettling gaze of a man from a world where the gods demanded a very tangible price. The bog bodies represent a sacrifice to the land, but on a cluster of islands far to the northwest, an entire society made a sacrifice of a different kind to the sea and the sky itself. The archipelago of St. Kilda lies 40 miles west of Scotland's Outer Hebrides, a terrifying expanse of open, storm-racked ocean separating it from the nearest land. For over 2,000 years, a small community clung to life on the main island of Herta, in what is often described as the most remote settlement in the British Isles. Their existence was a daily negotiation with sheer verticality, living on cliffs that dropped 700 feet straight into the Atlantic. Their survival depended not on farming the poor soil, but on harvesting the sea and, most remarkably, the air. Every summer, the men would undertake perilous climbs down the sheer rock faces to harvest seabirds, primarily the fulmar and the gannet. They took the eggs, the meat, and the precious oil from the young birds, a resource so vital it was their primary export and their main source of fuel for lamps. This dizzying, dangerous harvest defined their calendar, their economy, and their very identity. Yet the islands hold quieter, more perplexing mysteries than the dramatic climbs. Scattered across the harsh landscape are over 1,000 stone structures known as clates. These are not homes, but dristone huts with turf roofs, built with a unique double-walled design that allows the wind to whistle through. They served as storage lockers, protecting the dried bird carcasses, feathers, and eggs from the elements and from the island's fierce population of rats. The clates are everywhere, a silent stone network that speaks of a highly organized system of food preservation, one perfected over countless generations. They are the physical memory of a culture built on avian abundance, but life on this edge was unsustainable in the modern world. The 20th century brought contact, disease, and the slow erosion of their traditional way of life. The population dwindled. Finally, in August of 1930, the remaining 36 inhabitants made a collective, heartbreaking decision. They voted to request evacuation to the Scottish mainland. They left their clates, their stone houses, and their ancient rhythms behind, closing a chapter of human resilience that had lasted for millennia. The mystery of St. Kilda, however, is not just one of hardship, but of profound biological and cultural separation. This isolation is perfectly symbolized by a tiny, feathered resident, the St. Kilda wren. This bird is a distinct subspecies found nowhere else on Earth. Slightly larger and darker than its mainland cousins, it evolved in splendid isolation, just as the human community did. The people themselves developed in a genetic bubble, their dialects, customs, and even physical characteristics shaped by 2,000 years of extreme seclusion. They had their own unit of measurement based on the length of a specific type of dried fish. Their social structure was uniquely communal, with decisions made by a council of all the men. This raises a haunting question about the nature of community and knowledge. What unique understanding of the natural world, what stories, songs, and survival techniques evolved in that island laboratory and then vanished when the last boat sailed for the mainland? The clates stand empty, the wren sings its unique song for few to hear, and the cliffs echo only with the wind and the cries of seabirds. St. Kilda is a monument to a human experiment in isolation, a testament to how a culture can adapt brilliantly to a specific, brutal niche, and a sobering reminder of how fragile such a world becomes when that isolation finally ends. The isolation of St. Kilda was a human creation, but sometimes the sea itself decides to end a world. Beneath the churning grey waters of the North Sea, between the coasts of Britain and Denmark, lies a lost continent of Europe. This was Doggerland, a vast and fertile plain of hills, forests, rivers, and marshes that, for thousands of years, was home to thriving communities of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. It was not an island, but a connective land bridge, a place where animals migrated and people followed the seasons, a complete landscape that simply vanished. Around 6,500 to 6,200 years before the Common Era, the world was warming at the end of the last ice age. Glaciers melted and sea levels rose relentlessly. For the people of Doggerland, this was not a slow news story. It was a creeping generational catastrophe. They would have watched their familiar world shrink year by year. Coastal campsites were abandoned, freshwater springs turned brackish, the rising North Sea transformed rolling hills into isolated islands, and then, in a final, cataclysmic event likely involving a massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway and a devastating tsunami, those last refuges were swallowed for good. The waves closed over forests and river valleys, and an entire chapter of human prehistory sank beneath the waves. Today, fishermen trawling those seabeds occasionally haul up more than just fish. Their nets bring to the surface the tangible ghosts of Doggerland, ancient animal bones, the tusks of mammoths, and even crafted tools of flint and antler. One of the most poignant finds is a small, barbed bone point carved from a deer antler, a hunting weapon lost by its owner millennia ago. But these are just scattered fragments washed from their original context. The true mystery and the immense potential treasure lies in what remains preserved in the seabed sediment. Archaeologists now understand that the cold, dark, oxygen-poor environment of the seafloor is a perfect preservative. Entire landscapes are buried in the mud, frozen in time. This means there could be intact hunting camps with tools and hearths left exactly as they were. There might be wooden structures, canoes, or even ritual sites. The most tantalizing possibility is art, perhaps carved pendants or decorated objects that could reveal the spiritual world of these lost cultures. Finding these sites, however, is like searching for a single, buried needle in a 100,000 square mile haystack, all under turbulent, often stormy water. Modern technology is providing the first maps of this drowned world. Sonar surveys have begun to chart the ancient river systems of Doggerland, revealing the sunken Thames and Rhine converging in a long-lost delta. These digital landscapes allow researchers to pinpoint where people would have likely lived, near fresh water and on higher ground. The dream is to one day conduct a detailed archaeological excavation on the seabed, to uncover a settlement and learn not just how these people lived, but how they faced the end of their world. What stories did they tell as the waters rose? Did they simply pack their belongings and retreat to the rising coasts of Britain and Europe, their history and identity dissolving into new populations? Doggerland is a haunting reminder that the geography we take for granted is not permanent. It presents a profound mystery not of a single vanished artifact, but of an entire lost ecosystem and the human lives it supported, a forgotten Atlantis that was utterly real, waiting silently in the dark for its story to be recovered. The identity of the Sea Peoples remains one of history's greatest unsolved whodunits. We have a clear record of the crime, a series of civilizations burning across the eastern Mediterranean, but the perpetrators are spectral, known only by the name their victims gave them. Our most vivid evidence comes from the walls of Pharaoh Ramesses III's mortuary temple at Medinet Habu in Egypt. These stone carvings are not just art, they are propaganda and a historical report depicting the pharaoh's desperate, victorious battle against this mysterious confederation. The reliefs show us a chaotic naval engagement with enemy ships unlike the Egyptian fleet. Their vessels have high, vertical prows and sterns designed for the open sea, and they are shown capsizing in the tumult. But it is the warriors themselves who are most striking. They are depicted with a variety of distinctive horned helmets, feathered headdresses, and round shields. Some carry long, straight swords, others spears. Crucially, they are shown not just as warriors but as migrants. Their families travel with them in ox-drawn carts, a detail that transforms them from mere pirates into entire peoples on the move. So who were they? The leading theories connect them to the wider chaos of the late Bronze Age collapse. One group, the Peliset, are almost universally linked to the Philistines, who later settled on the coast of Canaan. Their material culture shows strong connections to the Aegean world. Others, like the Shekelesh, may have origins in Sicily, and the Denyon could be connected to the Greek Danaoi from Homeric epics. The Lucca might be Lycians from Anatolia. The prevailing idea is not of a single nation, but a domino effect. A perfect storm of factors, including prolonged drought, crop failures, and possibly earthquakes, destabilized the entire region. This pressure set populations adrift, creating a chain reaction of displacement and violence. Warrior bands from different areas coalesced into a lethal coalition, a storm of swords searching for new homes, and they found them in the weakened heartlands of empire. Their impact was catastrophic. The Hittite Empire, Egypt's great rival to the north, vanished from history entirely. Its capital Hattusa burned and abandoned. The mighty trading city of Ugarit sent desperate letters saying its ships were away and its troops were in Hittite lands, leaving it defenseless. It was then utterly destroyed and never reoccupied. Egypt itself, under Ramesses III, fought for its very survival. His inscriptions boast of turning back the invaders, but the cost was immense. The Egyptian state was financially and militarily exhausted, and it would never again project the same power in the region. This is where Cyprus, ancient Alashia, becomes the critical linchpin in the mystery. As we heard earlier, Cyprus was the copper hub of the age, the Saudi Arabia of bronze. For the Sea Peoples, controlling or destroying this resource was a strategic masterstroke. By ravaging the island's industrial coastal cities, they weren't just looting wealth, they were severing the supply line of a critical war material for their remaining enemies. Did they conquer Cyprus to use its forges for themselves, or did they simply scorch the earth to cripple the established powers? The ash layers at Nkomi and Kishon suggest the latter was brutally effective. The silence that fell over the copper trade was the same silence that fell over the civilized world, plunging it into a centuries-long dark age. Were the Sea Peoples the cause of this collapse, or were they merely a symptom of a system already buckling under ecological and social strain? The ruins of Cyprus hold that answer, buried in the soot of its own furnaces. The profound silence of Maldon Island's 92 stone platforms is a question carved in coral. We know the how, a staggering feat of labor moving countless slabs across a barren atoll, but the who and the why echo far beyond its empty shores. To understand this place, we must see it not as an isolated anomaly, but as a single point in a vast mental map drawn by the greatest navigators the world has ever known, the Polynesians. Their settlement of the Pacific was not a random scattering, but a deliberate, heroic expansion across thousands of miles of open ocean. They found and settled islands rich with life like Tahiti and the Marquesas. But they also found places like Maldon, barren and inhospitable. Why would they go there and why would they build? The most compelling answer transforms Maldon from a potential home into a sacred destination. Across Polynesia, from Hawaii to New Zealand, we find marae, ceremonial platforms used for worship, sacrifice, and social gathering. The structures on Maldon are a stark, minimalist version of this widespread tradition. This suggests it was a pilgrimage site, a holy ground deliberately chosen for its very isolation. Think of it as a cathedral built upon a remote mountain peak, where the journey itself was an act of devotion. Skilled navigators, perhaps from the Marquesas or Society Islands hundreds of miles away, would have undertaken the perilous voyage at specific times, perhaps for rituals tied to the seasons, to ancestor veneration, or to rites of passage for navigators themselves. The barrenness was the point, a blank slate purified by sea and sun, where the community could connect with the gods far from the distractions of daily life. The orientation of the platforms adds another layer of intrigue. While not as precisely studied as Stonehenge, the careful placement of these structures likely held celestial significance. The Polynesian universe was mapped by the stars, which were not just guides for travel, but a calendar for planting, fishing, and ceremony. The platforms may have been aligned to the rising of specific stars like the Pleiades, whose appearance marked the beginning of the sacred season. A solstice sunrise might have illuminated a particular altar, or the platform edges could have framed the Southern Cross. If so, Maldon was not just a temple, but an observatory, a place where the rhythms of the cosmos were observed and honored in the most extreme environment imaginable. This archaeological view of a seasonal, sacred outpost is grounded in the practical patterns of Polynesian life, but the utter lack of fresh water or sustainable food sources pushes the mystery to its limit. How did a construction crew survive long enough to build these monuments? This logistical nightmare fuels more speculative ideas. Could Maldon have been a temporary refuge for a group stranded during a migration, who built the platforms as desperate pleas to the gods for deliverance or as memorials to their plight? Or does its existence hint at a wider, now vanished network of seafaring cultures that used these central Pacific dots as navigational waypoints or trading stations, leaving Maldon as a ghostly hub in a forgotten commercial or spiritual circuit? The stones offer no ledger, no list of voyages. They simply stand, aligned to a sky full of stars that once guided people across an empty ocean. Were the builders honoring those same stars, or were they sending a signal to them? The answer lies not just in the coral, but in the vast blue space between islands, in the courage that turned a waterless rock into an altar under the infinite sky. The silence of the Sokushinbatsu is not merely spiritual, it is a profound biological defiance. Modern science has turned its gaze upon these enigmatic figures, not to dispel their sanctity, but to unravel the precise, horrifying mechanism of their preservation. The results are a chilling fusion of faith and biochemistry. At the core of the process was the tea made from the sap of the yorushi tree, the same lacquer used to make durable bowls. This was no simple herbal brew. Yorushi sap contains a potent cocktail of chemicals, including urushiol, the same compound that causes the painful rash from poison ivy. For the living monk, drinking this tea was an act of intense, deliberate suffering. It induced violent vomiting and sweating, rapidly expelling fluids from his body. More crucially, the toxic compounds were absorbed into his tissues. After death, these same chemicals acted as a powerful antibacterial and insecticidal agent, saturating his body from the inside out and making it a hostile environment for the microbes of decay. This was paired with the pine bark and nut diet, which stripped the body of fat and further dehydrated the tissues, leaving little for bacteria to consume. The final act, entombment in a dry, stone crypt, completed the process by providing a stable, cool environment. Together, these steps created a perfect recipe for natural mummification. Advanced medical imaging has peered beneath the darkened skin. CT scans of several Sokushin-batsu reveal astonishing internal preservation. Their organs, while shrunken and desiccated, often remain in place. Their skeletal structures are intact, and the scans can even show the compressed space where their digestive tracts, emptied by years of extreme fasting, once were. This scientific clarity, however, deepens the spiritual paradox. Was this miraculous preservation the divine reward for unparalleled piety, as the tradition holds? Or was it, in a starkly material sense, the accidental byproduct of a brutal regimen never intended to achieve this specific physical result? The monks sought enlightenment, not embalming. Yet the method they followed was so systematic, so perfectly tailored to inhibit decay, that a third, more unsettling possibility emerges. Could this have been a form of sacred science, a carefully guarded technical knowledge passed down among ascetics, a practical method to achieve a spiritual goal? The line between a blessed miracle and a meticulously executed preservation technique blurs entirely. These seated figures force us to confront a world where the ultimate devotion was measured not in prayers alone, but in a conscious, years-long orchestration of the body's own chemistry, a journey where the road to eternity was paved with poison and pine. The deliberate preservation of the Sokushin Batsu was a spiritual science, but on the arid slopes of Tenerife, another island people perfected the art of the dead for reasons that remain wrapped in mystery. The Guanche mummies, known as Zaxos, are not merely preserved bodies. They are masterpieces of mortuary technology, echoing the great traditions of Egypt yet born in complete isolation. The process they developed was methodical and profound. First, the body was eviscerated through small incisions, its internal organs carefully removed. Then the cavity was cleansed with a mixture of sea salt and aromatic herbs like broom and pine resin, before being stuffed with more of these preserving plants. The body was then subjected to a long period of desiccation, either through exposure to the dry, volcanic air and sun, or through the application of controlled heat from fires. This slow drying turned the tissues into a durable leather, halting decay. Finally, the Zaxo was meticulously wrapped in strips of goat skin, its final shroud, and often placed in a fetal position. The result was a mummy of such quality that many have survived for over 1,000 years, their features and even their tattoos still visible. This sophisticated practice presents a staggering historical puzzle. How did a Neolithic culture, using only stone and bone tools, develop a mummification technique that parallels the work of the sophisticated embalmers of the Nile, a civilization separated by the entire breadth of the Sahara and the Mediterranean Sea? The leading theory is one of astonishing independent invention. The Guanches, cut off from the world for millennia, faced the universal human questions of death and the afterlife. Their solution, born from trial, error, and deep spiritual belief, simply converged on similar methods, using the natural resources available to them: salt from the sea, resins from the pines, and skins from their herds. It is a powerful testament to the human mind's ability to arrive at complex answers in isolation. Yet, a more tantalizing possibility whispers from the past. The Guanches were Berbers originating from North Africa. Before their seafaring ancestors ever reached the Canary Islands, the practice of mummification was already ancient in the cultures of the Sahara. While the Egyptian method is the most famous, other African peoples also preserved their dead. Could the Guanches have carried a proto-tradition with them, a cultural memory of preserving the body that then evolved over centuries on their island fortress into the precise art of the Zaxo? This would suggest a lost thread of trans-Saharan knowledge, a very ancient connection that predates their isolation. The mummies themselves are the direct window. Studies of their remains reveal a people who are tall, robust, and adapted to their rugged environment. Their DNA confirms their North African roots, but their culture became uniquely their own. The care taken in mummification speaks of a society with a strong, organized priesthood and a complex belief system where the physical body was a vessel for the soul's journey. They placed their Zaxos in sacred caves high in the mountains, turning the volcanic peaks into islands of the dead, forever watching over the world of the living. To look upon a Guanche mummy is not to see a mere artifact, but a person, a parent, a leader, or a craftsperson. whose community loved them enough to perform a laborious, sacred rite to ensure their permanence. They represent the ultimate paradox of these forgotten islands, a people living a Stone Age life, yet holding a sophisticated understanding of eternity that rivaled the greatest civilizations of their age. Were they brilliant innovators in a vacuum, or were they the last keepers of a ritual so old its origins are lost beneath the desert sands? The Zaxos keep their silence, guarding the final secret of their own creation. The mummies of Tenerife were laid to rest with reverence, but on Oak Island, the dead are part of the ledger. The legend of the money pit is not just about what is buried, but the price paid to find it. A local superstition warns that 7 men must die before the treasure can be revealed. To date, 6 lives have been claimed by the island's treacherous shafts and collapsing earth, a grim tally that hangs over every new excavation. This blend of persistent hope and persistent tragedy finds its modern embodiment in 2 brothers from Michigan, Rick and Marty Lagina. Their lifelong fascination with the mystery, chronicled in the History Channel series The Curse of Oak Island, has transformed the hunt into a televised archaeological saga, applying 21st century technology to an 18th century puzzle. Their approach is a far cry from the pickaxes and wooden pumps of the past. They use sonic drilling to extract deep core samples, satellite imaging to scan for anomalies, and underwater remotely operated vehicles to probe the labyrinthine flood tunnels. This high-tech pursuit has yielded a new generation of tantalizing, if fiercely debated, artifacts. One of the most controversial finds was the suggestion of a Roman sword, reportedly spotted in underwater footage near the island. The claim, if ever substantiated, would upend conventional history, implying transatlantic contact centuries before the Vikings. While most experts dismiss it as a shaped rock or a modern debris, its very proposal shows how Oak Island fuels the most speculative reaches of imagination. More concrete but no less mysterious are items like a small lead cross found in the island's mud and dated potentially to the medieval period. Could it be a pilgrim's badge lost by a Templar knight? Or merely a fishing weight from a later era? Each object becomes a Rorschach test, seen either as a vital clue or an irrelevant distraction. Perhaps the most significant modern discoveries are not glamorous treasures but structural evidence. Core samples have retrieved wood dated to the 1700s, deep within the original money pit area, proving human activity at that depth from that specific time. Sonar scans suggest large, man-made cavities in the bedrock. The brothers and their team have also uncovered what appears to be a vast, underground stone wharf or structure in the swamp, a feature that suggests a coordinated, large-scale operation took place on the island long before the first teenagers started digging. Yet for every promising find, the island's ancient defenses hold firm. Excavation pits still flood inexplicably, tunnels collapse, promising leads fade into dead ends. The curse, whether supernatural or simply the statistical hazard of such a dangerous endeavor, feels palpably real. The modern chapter of Oak Island reframes the central question. Is this a sober archaeological investigation slowly peeling back the layers of a complex historical site, perhaps a privateer's stash or an early colonial engineering project? Or is it the latest, most expensive act in a grand tragicomedy where the real treasure is the endless pursuit itself? The Lagina brothers' mission, watched by millions, ensures the legend breathes on. They are not just searching for gold, they are testing a 200-year-old dream against the unyielding reality of stone, water, and time. With the shadow of the seventh death looming in local lore, every turned stone carries the weight of that prophecy. Will the next discovery be a chest of coins or simply another reason to keep looking? The debate over Yonaguni is a courtroom where the evidence is stone and the jury is your own perception. On one side, geologists present a powerful case for nature's artistry. The monument is composed of a sedimentary sandstone that naturally fractures along straight lines and flat plains as it cools and erodes. The powerful Kuroshio Current, a river in the ocean, has scoured these formations for millennia, acting like a liquid sandblaster to sharpen edges and carve out what appear to be terraces. What looks like a carved staircase could simply be a series of these natural bedding planes, where softer layers of rock eroded faster than harder ones, leaving behind what seems like deliberate steps. The sheer, flat walls are textbook examples of jointing, where rock splits along its own internal weaknesses. From this perspective, Yonaguni is a spectacular coincidence, a masterpiece of submarine erosion that tricks our pattern-seeking brains into seeing human design. Now step forward the archaeologists and independent researchers. They point to specific features that seem to defy this random explanation. Look at the two massive pillars that stand side by side, their surfaces unnervingly smooth and parallel. Observe the sharp 90-degree angles where walls meet, a geometry rarely produced by chaotic natural forces. There is a distinct star-shaped platform, and nearby, a wide, flat area that resembles a plaza or stage. Most compelling to some is what appears to be a carved channel, a trench with a consistent width that runs along the base of a structure, looking less like a random crack and more like a gutter for water drainage. Then there is the so-called turtle-shaped platform, a low, flat rock with a raised, angular section at one end that bears a striking resemblance to stylized carvings found in ancient cultures. If these features were on land, few would hesitate to call them ruins. So where does the truth lie? Perhaps it exists in a fascinating middle ground. Some scholars propose that Yonaguni might be a natural formation that was later modified by human hands. Ancient peoples could have encountered these dramatic sandstone shapes when sea levels were lower, recognized their sacred or useful potential, and enhanced them with carving and shaping, turning a natural wonder into a ritual space. This hybrid theory could explain the sheer scale of the formation, which would be an almost unimaginable undertaking to build from scratch, while also accounting for the precise, artificial-looking details that feel so intentional. The monument rests in a silent blue courtroom, its verdict forever suspended in the water. Does it represent the incredible power of blind nature to mimic genius, or is it a sunken signature from a chapter of human history we have yet to read? The spiral of symbols on the Phaistos disk is a locked door, and for over a century, the world's best codebreakers have tried every key. One of the most persistent modern voices belongs to linguist Dr. Gareth Owens. After decades of study, he proposes that the disk is not a mundane inventory or a king's decree, but a religious hymn. He argues that a specific sequence of signs appears too frequently to be random, a potential refrain. Owens suggests this repeating phrase may be a prayer or invocation to a mother goddess, a central figure in Minoan religion often depicted in their art with snakes and open arms. If he is right, the disk is not a document but a devotional object, a permanent, printed prayer meant to be offered or displayed in a shrine. Other researchers have tried to tether the disk to known scripts. Some see a distant cousin to Linear A, the still undeciphered administrative script of the Minoans, proposing the disk's symbols are a more pictorial, ceremonial version of that language. Another bold theory reaches across the sea, suggesting the signs resemble hieroglyphs from ancient Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, hinting at a diplomatic message or a foreign cult object brought to Crete. Yet each of these attempts runs into the same immovable wall. The problem is not a lack of cleverness, but a lack of evidence. We have exactly one Phaistos disk. There are no other examples of this script anywhere in the world. This means cryptographers have a sample size of just 242 symbols total, with 45 unique signs. It is an impossibly small dataset. Without more text, any proposed translation is essentially a guess, a pattern seen in a void. There is no bilingual inscription, no Rosetta Stone with the same message in Greek or Egyptian to provide a crib. The disk is a language of one. This profound isolation is what makes it so hauntingly beautiful and so utterly frustrating. It represents a complete system of thought that flourished and then vanished without a single trace beyond this one clay circle. Was it an experimental notation that never caught on? Was it the sacred script of a single, secretive priesthood wiped out by the thorough eruption? Every symbol is clear, yet together they form the perfect cipher. The Phaistos disc sits in its museum case, a silent spiral from a world that speaks to us only in echoes, its message forever balanced on the edge of discovery and forever just out of reach. Among the Talayots and Navitas, the Taulas of Menorca stand apart. Their form is stark, a statement of pure geometry against the sky. Each one is a colossal T, a single, multi-ton vertical monolith with another massive slab perfectly balanced on top, all enclosed within a distinctive horseshoe-shaped wall of stone. This is not a building, it is a sculpture of immense scale, a portal of stone that feels both ancient and eerily modern in its simplicity. The precision is breathtaking, the horizontal capstone sometimes wider than the pillar beneath, yet it has remained locked in place for over 3,000 years. Walking into the enclosure at a site like Torralba den Salort, you are stepping into a sacred space that was clearly designed for something profound. The open end of the horseshoe almost always faces south, a deliberate orientation that is our first major clue. Researchers have found that at certain taulas during the winter solstice sunset, the last rays of the sun align perfectly to shine through the entrance and illuminate the central T structure, bathing it in a brief golden light. This suggests the taulas were sophisticated astronomical calendars, giant stone instruments that marked the turning of the year, the death and rebirth of the sun, which for an agricultural society was a matter of life and death. But there is another, darker layer of evidence. Excavations within some of these enclosures have uncovered something more visceral than celestial alignment, the burnt bones of young lambs and goats. This points strongly to the taulas being altars for animal sacrifice. The theory imagines a solemn ritual where the community would gather within the horseshoe, watching as priests performed offerings at the base of the massive T, perhaps to ensure fertility for the flocks or to give thanks for the harvest. The taula itself might have represented a deity, a stone god receiving the offering, yet the space itself suggests something more than just a temple. The horseshoe shape creates a natural amphitheater, a place where the entire community could witness the rituals that bound them together. This was likely where laws were proclaimed, disputes settled, and identities reinforced under the watchful presence of the ancestors and the gods. The taula's power lies in its refusal to give a single answer. It is an observatory, an altar, and a community hall fused into one unforgettable shape. Its stark, silent form holds the echo of a society that measured the heavens, honored their gods with sacrifice, and found their unity in the shadow of a stone giant. That single, overturned chair in the lighthouse kitchen speaks of an interruption so sudden it feels unnatural. The Flannan Isles mystery did not exist in a vacuum. It was born from a landscape already steeped in ancient dread. Long before the lighthouse was built, these jagged rocks were known to the people of the Outer Hebrides as the Seven Hunters, a place spoken of in whispers. Local folklore painted them as forbidden, haunted grounds associated with the Scythian, the fairy folk or little people of Gaelic tradition. These were not cute sprites, but powerful, capricious beings who dwelled in the liminal spaces between worlds, and the extreme isolation of the Flannan Isles made them a perfect threshold. To venture there was to risk being taken or simply never returning, a superstition that the 1900 disappearance seemed to confirm with terrifying literalness. When the official inquiry settled on the practical tragedy of a freak wave, the public imagination refused to be so easily satisfied. The story tapped into a deeper, older fear of the sea's absolute indifference and the vulnerability of human order in the face of vast, lonely nature. This cultural resonance found powerful expression in poetry. In 1912, Wilfred Wilson Gibson published his haunting narrative poem, Flannan Isle. It did not present facts but feelings, weaving the sparse details into a ghostly tapestry. Gibson gave voice to the relief sailors, describing the untouched meal, the stopped clock, and the overwhelming silence that greeted them. The poem ends with a chilling image: though three men dwell on Flannan Isle, who dwell on Flannan Isle no more. It cemented the event not as a maritime accident, but as a modern myth, a perfect fragment of unexplained horror. The mystery's grip has only tightened with time, evolving to fit new mediums. It has inspired songs, novels, and even an episode of the long-running science fiction series Doctor Who, where the Time Lord confronts a malevolent, shape-shifting entity on the lonely rock. In that story, the disappearance is not caused by a wave, but by an alien predator that feeds on fear, a metaphor for the very terror the real event provokes. Why does this particular tragedy endure when so many other maritime disasters have faded? It is the starkness of the stage: three men, a single building, an empty ocean. There are no other witnesses, no conflicting reports, just a door left open and a life interrupted. It reduces the epic struggle between humanity and the elements to its most intimate, terrifying scale. The Flannan Isles are not just a location, they are a character, a silent, brooding presence that watches and waits. The lighthouse still stands, its light now automated, a lonely sentinel on a cliff that keeps its final secret. But the true legacy of the mystery is what it asks of us every time we hear it: to stand for a moment on that windy platform, to look out at the gray, heaving water, and to feel the profound fragility of a single, warm light in an endless, cold dark. The sea's retreat that December morning was an act of terrifying revelation. Where there had only been sand and surf, the vanished water laid bare a hidden city. The most immediate and stunning sight was a colossal stone lion, its powerful form carved from a single block of granite, now lying on its side as if knocked over by a giant's hand. This was no small artifact, it was a monumental guardian, a symbol of royal power from the Pallava dynasty that had ruled this coast over 1,300 years ago. Nearby, the tsunami had scoured away centuries of sediment to reveal a long, collapsed temple wall, its precisely cut stones still fitted together in a straight line. And stretching across the newly exposed seabed were orderly rows of other granite blocks, some squared and ready for construction, others shaped into pillars, all arranged with a clear human intention. It was not random debris, it was the skeleton of a port, a waterfront that had once bustled with traders and pilgrims. For the local fishermen, the moment was one of profound, chilling validation. The ancient legend their grandparents had whispered was true. They were literally standing on the remains of one of the 7 pagodas. The ocean had given back a piece of its plunder. In the months and years that followed, scientific teams moved in to systematically study what the tsunami had exposed. The Archaeological Survey of India, alongside the National Institute of Oceanography, launched a series of underwater expeditions. Using side-scan sonar, they mapped the seabed for miles along the coast. The sound waves painted a digital picture of a lost world. The sonar returns showed not just the scattered blocks seen at low tide, but extensive, coherent structures further out. They identified the remains of a massive stone wharf or breakwater, designed to protect ships in the harbor. They found the clear outlines of what appeared to be several more temple complexes, their floor plans still discernible in the patterns of fallen walls and plinths. One of the most significant discoveries was a large, rectangular structure sitting in about 25 feet of water, its dimensions matching those of a medium-sized temple's foundation. Scattered around it were stone relics, including more lion sculptures and fragments of elaborately carved pillars, confirming this was a place of high-status architecture and worship. Each scan added another layer to the map of a substantial suburban extension of ancient Mahabalipuram, a prosperous satellite settlement that served the main port. This modern technological survey did something remarkable. It provided a scientific grid for an ancient folk tale. The legend of the 7 pagodas was no longer just a metaphor for the destructive power of the gods. It was a communal memory of a real geological event, likely a series of catastrophic storms or a predecessor tsunami that had gradually inundated the city over generations. The surviving shore temple was not a solitary masterpiece, but the lucky sibling, built on slightly higher ground or fortified by later rulers. The validation is a powerful lesson in historical methodology. It teaches us to listen to the stories. Oral traditions are not mere fantasy. They are often the long echo of a cataclysm, a way for a community to process and remember a trauma that reshaped their world. The fishermen of Mahabalipuram did not have sonar or archaeology degrees, but they carried a truth in their stories for over 1,000 years, a truth written in stone and waiting for the ocean to look away for just a moment. What other drowned truths lie along the world's coastlines, remembered only in the oldest songs and the most persistent local ghosts? While geologists saw a natural formation, another group saw a prophecy fulfilled. Decades before the Bimini Road was found, a man lying on a couch in Virginia claimed to have already seen it. Edgar Cayce, the famous sleeping prophet, gave hundreds of psychic readings in the 1930s and 40s that described the lost civilization of Atlantis. In one particularly specific reading, Cayce stated that a portion of Atlantis, specifically a temple called the Temple of Posidia, would rise again from the ocean near the island of Bimini, and he gave a date, 1968 or 1969. For his followers, this was not a vague prediction, it was a detailed forecast. So when a pilot flying over the clear Bahamian waters in 1968 spotted the strange, linear formation on the seafloor, the announcement was met with stunned belief. To them, this was not a coincidence, it was a validation from the universe itself. The discovery seemed to align perfectly with Cayce's timeline, transforming the Bimini Road from a curious underwater feature into potential physical proof of a psychic's vision. This synchronicity injected the site with a powerful new narrative, one that blended hard archaeology with metaphysical belief. It was no longer just a debate between natural geology and human construction. It was now a question of whether ancient wisdom, accessed through trance, could guide modern discovery. The prophecy gave the Atlantis theory a compelling emotional engine, a story that felt destined. This connection continues to draw New Age researchers, mystics, and seekers to Bimini to this day. They visit not just to see the stones, but to feel their energy, to meditate on the site, and to look for further clues Cayce might have hinted at, like hidden crystal chambers or records of ancient technology. For them, the Bimini Road is a spiritual waypoint, a tangible anchor for a lost history of advanced consciousness. This creates a fascinating cultural rift. Mainstream science sees a testable hypothesis about B-Croc formation. The prophecy camp sees a different kind of evidence, one based on faith in unseen information and the power of synchronicity. The two perspectives often talk past each other, one demanding empirical data, the other valuing intuitive truth. Yet both are ultimately trying to solve the same core mystery: what is this structure and why is it here? Cayce's prophecy ensured that the Bimini Road would never be just a geological oddity. It permanently entwined the site with the legend of Atlantis, making it a pilgrimage destination for anyone who believes that the past might still speak to us, not just through shards of pottery, but through dreams and predictions from decades ago. The stones themselves remain silent, but the human stories around them are louder than ever. That single, perfect sphere on Isla del Caño is a monument to geometry, but the Moai of Rapa Nui are a testament to motion. We see them standing, silent and eternal, but their true story is one of an incredible journey. Each multi-ton statue had to travel up to 11 miles from the quarry at roanoke-colony to its coastal platform, an engineering challenge that has fueled debate for generations. For a long time, the accepted image was one of brute force and vast resources. The traditional theory suggested the islanders used a system of log rollers and sledges. Teams would have felled trees, laid them as a track, and then slowly, painfully, dragged the statues across the island using strong ropes made from hemp. This method seemed logical, fitting with how other ancient cultures moved heavy objects, but it also painted a picture of a society consuming its own environment, cutting down every tree to serve the statue cult, a narrative that supported the idea of a civilization doomed by its own excess. Then a new idea began to take literal shape. Researchers Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo, along with National Geographic engineer and explorer, proposed a radically different method. They suggested the statues were not dragged but walked, inspired by local oral histories that literally described the Moai walking across the land. They designed an experiment. Their method used 3 strong ropes. One team pulled from the front to provide forward tilt, while 2 teams on either side used a rocking motion, pulling alternately on ropes attached to the statue's midsection. By rocking the Moai carefully from side to side, they found they could make the statue pivot on its curved base, creating a shuffling forward walk. This method, demonstrated in compelling experimental archaeology footage, showed that a relatively small team of around 18 people could move a 10-ton replica statue hundreds of feet in just minutes. It was efficient, it required far less timber, and it aligned with the proud cultural memory of the statues moving under their own power. The walking theory transformed the Moai from passive burdens into active participants in their own procession, a dynamic dance between human ingenuity and stone. Of course, not every idea is grounded in physical experiment. Fringe theories have long swirled around the Moai, often born from a sense of awe. Some have proposed the use of levitation, suggesting the ancient islanders possessed lost acoustic or vibrational technologies that could make the stones weightless. Others speculate about extraterrestrial assistance or the power of mass meditation. While these ideas capture the imagination, they tell us more about our own desire for magical solutions than they do about the Rapa Nui people. The beauty of the walking hypothesis is that it demystifies the monumental, showing how clever physics and coordinated effort could achieve what looks like magic. It suggests a society that was not recklessly destroying its environment to move statues, but one that was ingeniously adapting to it, using rhythm and balance to accomplish the impossible. The Moai that stand today are not just portraits of ancestors, they are frozen moments in a long, rhythmic walk, a testament to the power of a simple, brilliant idea moving through a willing community. The sheer impossibility of nan-madol demands a story as grand as its stones. Across the generations on Pohnpei, the explanation was not one of ropes and rafts, but of sorcery. The legend speaks of 2 brothers, Olasipa and Olasopa, powerful sorcerers who arrived from a distant land. They sought a place to build an altar to worship the god of agriculture, but the main island was unsuitable. Their gaze fell upon the shallow reef, and they decided to raise a city from the sea itself. The challenge was the basalt, those colossal, prism-shaped logs weighing up to 50 tons each, quarried from the opposite side of the island. How could they move them? The legend says the brothers summoned a great dragon, not a beast of fire, but a creature of magic. This dragon would fly to the quarry, wrap its coils around a single massive stone, and lift it into the air, carrying it across the island and over the lagoon to settle perfectly into place at the building site. One by one, the stones flew, commanded by sacred words and willpower, until the 92 islets of nan-madol stood complete. This is not a child's fable, it is a profound cultural memory. When a technological feat is so staggering that it defies the understanding of later generations, it enters the realm of the supernatural. The legend of the flying stones is likely a mythic encoding of a real but lost engineering technique. Perhaps the builders used a sophisticated system of buoyancy, lashing the stones beneath large outrigger canoes or bamboo rafts during the highest tides, making them appear to glide across the water's surface. The rhythmic, coordinated chants of hundreds of workers pulling on ropes could have been remembered as the magical incantations that commanded the stones to move. The dragon itself might be a metaphor for the long, snaking lines of laborers or the sinuous motion of the rafts. The myth preserves the awe, translating unimaginable effort into understandable magic. And the effort truly was a nightmare of logistics. Constructing a city on a living coral reef is an act of defiance. There is no soil, no fresh water, no natural foundation. The builders first had to create a base by piling endless tons of smaller coral rubble onto the reef flat. Then, they had to position the titanic basalt logs with precision to form stable walls that could withstand typhoons and tidal forces, all while managing the daily influx of seawater through the canals. Every single resource, from food for the workers to the drinking water itself, had to be imported from the main island. The legend of the flying sorcerers does more than explain how. It explains why such an irrational place was chosen. It sanctifies the insanity of the endeavor, saying it was not human ambition alone, but divine will that placed a city on the water. The stones did not fly, but the idea behind them did, a vision so powerful it convinced an entire society to attempt the impossible, leaving behind a ruin that makes us still question where the line between history and legend truly begins. They began their journey in the quarry where the raw granite was first liberated from the earth. But the final resting place of the Isla del Caño spheres was not random. When archaeologists carefully mapped their original positions, before many were rolled away by curiosity or farming, a pattern emerged. These perfect orbs were not scattered like fallen fruit. They were deliberately arranged, often placed in long, straight lines or in distinct groups near the dwellings of chiefs and in proximity to important burial sites. This was a grammar of placement, a silent language written across the landscape. The spheres were not hidden treasures, they were public statements integrated into the very fabric of community and power. To stand before a line of these spheres leading toward a leader's home was to walk a path of authority, each stone a step reinforcing the social order. Their presence near graves suggests a bridge between worlds, perhaps a guide for the soul or a marker of an ancestor's enduring influence. So what were they meant to symbolize? In their perfect roundness, they are a mirror of the cosmos. It is compelling to see them as representations of celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, or even the planets, brought down to Earth to tether the heavens to a specific place of power. Their arrangement could have mirrored star patterns, creating a terrestrial map of the night sky that only the initiated could read. Alternatively, the sphere itself, with no beginning and no end, is a universal symbol of unity, wholeness, and perfection. A line of such symbols could represent the unbroken lineage of a clan or the social unity of the people under their chief. The very effort to create them, a communal project requiring specialized knowledge and coordinated labor, may have been as important as the finished object, a physical manifestation of shared purpose and identity. They were likely all these things at once, astronomical markers, symbols of chiefly authority, and anchors of communal belief. This is why, despite being perhaps the most visually straightforward mystery on our list, the stone spheres of Isla del Caño are a perfect encapsulation of our entire journey. They are beautiful, tangible, and undeniably crafted with intent. We can touch them, measure their near-flawless curves, and trace the paths they once formed. Yet the specific thoughts they held, the prayers they carried, the exact names of the gods or ancestors they honored, have evaporated from the world. They are a message in a bottle where the bottle remains sturdy and elegant, but the letter inside has faded to nothing. They remind us that every mystery we have explored, from the haunted canals of Nan-Madol to the silent glyphs of Rapa Nui, shares this same heartbreaking core, a profound human expression waiting forever for a translator who will never come. These 35 forgotten islands are not isolated riddles, but pieces of a single, sprawling puzzle. When we step back from the individual stones and glyphs, patterns emerge from the ocean mist, revealing why these specks of land become such potent keepers of mystery. The first and most powerful force is isolation itself. An island is a natural laboratory, a sealed vessel where culture evolves without outside influence. On Rapa Nui, this led to the unique genius of the Rongorongo script. In the Canary Islands, it allowed the Guanche mummification tradition to develop in splendid independence. This separation fosters incredible innovation, but it also creates a terrifying fragility. When the outside world finally arrives or when internal collapse strikes, the knowledge cultivated in that bubble has nowhere else to exist. It vanishes completely, leaving behind artifacts without a dictionary, monuments without a manual. The loss is total, and the silence that follows is absolute. Across continents and oceans, a shared architectural language speaks from these shores, the language of megaliths. From the stacked basalt logs of Nan-Madol to the towering Moai, from the tallers of Menorca to the stone spheres of Costa Rica, there is a profound human urge to move mountains and shape the landscape. This isn't merely about showing off. Megalithic construction is a community's signature written in the heaviest ink possible. It declares we are here, we are organized, and our beliefs are permanent enough to be carved from the bones of the earth. The sheer effort required acts as a social glue, turning belief into collective action and leaving a legacy meant to outlast generations. It is a statement of identity shouted in stone across the centuries. And these stones often look upward. Astronomical alignment is a thread connecting sites as diverse as the tallers of Menorca, the potential celestial maps of Malden Island, and the solstice markers of many others. For island societies, the sky was not just a spectacle, it was a vital tool. The stars were a navigational highway for arrival, and their cycles were a calendar for survival, dictating planting, harvest, and migration. By anchoring their temples and monuments to the sun, moon, and stars, these cultures were literally building their worldview into the landscape, tethering their fragile human order to the perceived eternal order of the cosmos. It was a way to find meaning and predictability in their isolated world. Then there is the ever-present element of water, not as a sustainer of life, but as an agent of erasure. The narratives are saturated with cataclysm, the drowning of Mahabalipuram, the obliteration of Thera, the slow sinking of Doggerland, the flood tunnels of Oak Island. Water acts as the ultimate mystery maker, swallowing evidence and inspiring legends of divine punishment or tragic fate. These are not just stories, they are geological memories. A tsunami that destroys a city becomes a myth about angry gods. Gradual sea level rise over generations transforms into a tale of a land swallowed in a single night. The ocean provides a perfectly plausible, yet utterly final, explanation for disappearance, fueling the notion that something grand lies just out of sight beneath the waves. This brings us to the final haunting pattern, the persistent magnetism of islands for myths of advanced lost civilizations. Why do legends of Atlantis, Mu, or other sophisticated precursors so often place them on islands that vanished? Psychologically, an island is the perfect metaphor for a separated, idealized past. It is a place that can be imagined as pure, uncorrupted by the messy continents, a utopian laboratory where a wiser people achieved greatness before a fall. Its disappearance into the sea mirrors the way the past feels to us, accessible only in fragments, forever separated by an unbridgeable gulf of time. The ruins we find, whether natural or human, become proof of that separation, tantalizing clues that we are not the first to strive for greatness, and perhaps not the last to face oblivion. These island mysteries, in the end, hold up a mirror. They show us our own drive to create, to understand the cosmos, to leave a mark, and our deep-seated fear that all our efforts might one day be reclaimed by the sea, leaving behind only silent stones for a future people to puzzle over. From the geometric spheres of Costa Rica to the haunted canals of Micronesia, this journey across forgotten shores has been a testament to human ingenuity and the ocean's silence. These 35 ancient mysteries are far more than intellectual puzzles waiting for a single, satisfying answer. They are permanent echoes, reverberations from lost chapters in the story of us. Each silent moai, each undeciphered glyph, each submerged stone wall is a reminder that the official record of history is merely the text we have managed to recover. Beneath it lies a vast, rich, and unwritten tapestry, woven from the dreams, fears, and monumental efforts of countless cultures that flourished and faded long before our time. They challenge our assumptions about isolation and connection, about what it means to be advanced, and about the fragile line between a thriving society and a memory. This is not a story with an ending, but an ongoing conversation with the past. The true value of these island enigmas lies not in solving them, but in the act of wondering itself. They invite us to stay curious, to question the maps we are given, and to find profound beauty in the unknown. It is in the space between the question and the answer that imagination and discovery truly live. So we turn the question to you now. After this voyage across oceans and time, which of these forgotten island mysteries captures your imagination the most? Is it the walking moai of Rapa Nui, the silent plea of the roanoke carving, or the flying stones of nan-madol? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this exploration into the shadows of history, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your curiosity fuels these journeys. Until next time, keep looking to the horizon, and remember, the greatest adventures often lie in the stories the world has almost forgotten.